Wedding weekend? I squeezed my Harley between two parked cars, rode down the sidewalk, and stopped near an old oak tree. All eyes were on me as I swung off the footrest and stepped off the bike. It gave me considerable pleasure to see the confusion on their faces. I took off my leather jacket and unbuckled my helmet. I saw Steve get up from the picnic table and walk toward me as I pulled the helmet off my head. I carefully placed it on the handlebars and turned to face him. "Holy shit, Eric! God damn it, I never thought you'd ride so sweetly," he exclaimed. "I expected to see you in something like a Honda Civic." We shook hands, and he hugged me. He didn't even try to hide his pleasure that I had come to his daughter's wedding. He literally glowed as he turned to the gathered neighbors, friends, and family. "Hey, everybody. This is the guy who stopped me years ago," Steve laughed. I don't know whether to thank him for that or slap him. If he hadn't talked me out of running away from the wedding, I'd still be a free man, riding a Harley, drinking beer, and breaking hearts. "The only heart that will be broken will be yours, Steve, and it will be every time you see me with Wilbur Reynolds," said a woman's voice with challenge. Steve's wife, Grace, leisurely walked over to me, put her arms around my neck, and gave me a not-so-quick kiss on the lips. She had gotten a little heavier than on her wedding day, but she still looked great. Having given birth to 3 children and gained 15 pounds, she had barely suppressed her smoldering sexuality. I estimated that she must be about 42 now, since she was 2 years older than me in high school. "Eric, you've changed. You look great and like you're made of a piece of steel. I can't wait to see how Eva reacts when she sees you. She has to tear her ass up for the rest of her life," Grace added. "What did you do to get so muscular? I thought accountants were soft, pale, and chubby." "Are you saying, Grace, that I was like that when I left town 14 months ago?" I objected, but with a smile so Grace would know I wasn't upset. "I like to think that soft, fat Eric Walters is gone forever. I realized I didn't like him any more than I liked my loving wife, so I changed a few things. I hope I buried that fat bastard so deep that he never resurfaces." "Eric, I didn't realize you felt that way about yourself. I thought you were a contented, albeit somewhat soft husband and father. I never realized you were so unhappy with your body at the time," Grace admitted. "Well, Grace, the truth is that at the time I was damn pleased and blind as a bat. At least until Eve turned things upside down," I added. By this time, we'd gotten to the party, and Grace started introducing me to guests I didn't know yet. Most of them I remembered, since I was born and raised in this town. I had lived here until last April. I received many comments about my haircut, my tan, and my new physique. I lost count of how many times I was asked where I lived and what I did. Each time, I tried to answer patiently. I expected this to be the case when I decided to accept an invitation to the wedding of Anne, Steve's daughter. She had just graduated from Penn State University and would be teaching 3rd grade at a local elementary school in the fall. Her future husband had just been honorably discharged from the Marine Corps after 2 tours of duty in the Middle East. Eva and I were Anne's godparents. Becky was the one who insisted I return to my hometown for my goddaughter's wedding. Becky is my brother's wife, and she took me under her wing when Eva ruined my life. "Eric, you can't ignore your friends and family anymore. You were Steve's best man and Anne's godfather. You have to be there to be part of the celebration. You have to take back your life and show everyone that you've moved on. This will be the final step in your healing," she assured me. "You will come back a much happier person. You'll see how lucky you really are that Eva was an unfaithful fool, and that you're much better off without that cheating bitch." I wanted to believe her, but I was filled with doubt. Eva had told me too often that I was a lousy lover and a pathetic excuse for a man, and she had found a real man who knew how to treat and care for a woman, and she wanted me out of her life. And I didn't even realize anything was wrong. When she told me she wanted to move in with her lover, I was stunned. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Eva was right. I was a miserable bastard. The same day Eva informed me that she was moving in with her lover, I signed the agreement to sell our house and quit. It probably seemed rather childish and also reckless to most of our friends and family, but I had to leave. I was embarrassed to look anyone in the eye, knowing that they would think what a wimp I must be. Besides, I hated my job. I was an accountant for a firm with offices all over the eastern part of the country. I traveled as far away as I could. The job was tedious and boring as hell. Well, very exciting was the week I had to spend a few extra minutes finding an accounting error. I became a soft, middle-aged man with an expanding waistline and balding hair. I even started reading erotic stories online, and I remembered that's when I also started reading a novella about a beautiful boobed wife who told her husband she didn't want to be married anymore. He was a great prosecutor, but a lousy lover. In fact, now I was still waiting for new chapters in this saga that started back when my wife announced she was trading me in for a better model. I need to look more like this guy. My brother Frank and Becky lived just north of Pittsburgh. They owned several gyms and had recently expanded. They added a large room to each of their 3 gyms and began offering martial arts classes as well as ballroom and country dance lessons. They accepted me without prior notice when I showed up on their doorstep at 5 in the morning. Eric, we do need someone to handle all the financial affairs of our company, but it won't be enough for a full-time job, Frank added. If you were interested in other responsibilities, we could take you on full-time. We're always looking for reliable people. What other duties, Frank? I asked suspiciously. You want me to mop the floors and clean the showers? We've already contracted with a firm for that, Becky laughed. Our gyms are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need trainers. We started offering country and ballroom dance classes as well as martial arts. You are expected to help us with all of this. In case you haven't noticed, Becky, which seems very unlikely, I'm not suited for strength training or dancing, and for that matter, I couldn't get out of a wet paper bag, I replied somewhat dejectedly. I can't do that. I'm just looking for a job somewhere in accounting. I thought you said you hated that shit, bro. Why waste your life on something you dislike so much? Frank asked. Because I know I can do it, Frank. Look at me. I can't help you at the gym. Hell, I've never even been inside one. I'm just a chubby, slightly balding asshole, I admitted. No one's ever mistaken me for the Terminator. Not yet, Becky replied with a wide smile. You have the same genes as Frank, and look how I got his ass in shape. I'll have you polished in no time. But the real test will be ballroom dancing. Frank can lift a ton, but he's not the most graceful guy I've ever seen. He's a little better at country music. Frank teaches dancing? I asked incredulously. I find that hard to believe. No offense, Frank. No offense, Frank grinned. I don't teach that, Eric. I'm just a warm body that ladies use and discard when they're done with me. What the hell? Are you some kind of male escort or gigolo? I asked doubtfully. In a way, I am, Becky laughed. There are a lot of single people, men and especially women, who want to take dance lessons but don't have a partner. Frank and I and some of our other staff members fulfill those needs. We make sure that our clients have an enjoyable experience when taking lessons and someone to pair up with. Not that I would trumpet my own horns about myself, but I've gotten pretty good at learning to dance the tango and foxtrot. And you expect me to be able and willing to help the dancing ladies? Me? The guy with 2 left feet? I can tell you right now I can't dance. Like you just said, Frank and I are from the same freaky gene pool. You may not know how to dance yet, Becky laughed, but you'll learn. The most important thing is to make your partner feel special. Show her that you enjoy her company, her smile, her effort, and when acceptable, her body. And it's not just about good social interaction, it's about proper footwork. That's why our business thrives. We don't allow or encourage any of our employees to get too sexy in dance class or at the gym. Not that it couldn't happen, but we won't tolerate our employees being involved in the breakup of any marriages. We also want as few broken hearts as possible, if possible. Our gyms have a reputation. It's a safe environment for couples, singles, and even families. I sat and thought as I listened to Frank and Becky, and I had to admit that what they were doing was so much better than what I was doing. They were strong, healthy, and looked great. Frank was muscular, but he wasn't like those guys who look overly fancy. Becky was in fantastic shape. No one would ever realize she was in her 40s and had 2 teenage boys. I decided that no matter how much I embarrassed myself at the gym or on the dance floor, it would never be as bad as when your wife of 20 years tells you that you're worthless in bed, and she has a lover who is so much better than you. Okay, it's a deal. Don't say I didn't warn you. Start with this shitty piece of fat. although it might not be that easy to get me in shape or get me to dance without stepping on a bunch of toes. Eric, I'll make a new man out of you if you listen to me and follow my plan. It won't be easy, I admit. Your whole lifestyle will have to change and you'll spend many hours, but I promise you'll love the finished product. Your fat will be transformed in no time and eventually you'll have the body of a real man. And then you'll come home and pee on Eva's front porch, Becky promised. I wasn't so sure about the sculpting properties of my fat, but peeing on Eve's front porch sounded great, though highly unlikely. Becky was good at what she did. I was sure of it. But I seriously doubted she'd ever worked with a pathetic slob like me. The next 2 months passed like a blur. I was always hungry, always sick, and always too busy to have time to feel sorry for myself. By the time I went to bed, I was almost passing out. I never ate so many fruits and vegetables. I would kill for a Big Mac and a fry. Becky took measurements of my arms, chest, and waist the day we started my transformation. Every 2 weeks, she weighed me, took new measurements, and wrote them down. Never did she share the results with me, and I wondered if I was making any progress. I had access to weights at the gyms, and my weight didn't seem to have dropped much for a guy who dieted like a damn rabbit. I spent some time creating a system from the pile of papers and bills Frank had stuffed in his office. It took a few weeks to get everything in the right place, but once I got everything organized, my accounting duties for the business only took up about 8 hours a week. Another 40 or so hours I spent at the gyms. A few places in the ballroom had dance lessons in the evenings. I was told to be available for dancing at each location, ready to partner with any lady who needed it. Maybe it was because I wasn't as muscular as Frank that I appeared to pick things up pretty quickly. I was no Fred Astaire, but I gradually became a perfectly acceptable dance partner. For some reason, rope dancing proved a little difficult for me, but I hung in there and was able to hold my end of the rope after a couple months. We danced in one gym on Monday nights, and on Saturdays we practiced in 2 other gyms. I would start my morning class at one gym and drive 40 miles to participate in an afternoon class at the other. So, 4 nights a week of dancing and 2 more sessions on Saturdays. Then there were the martial arts classes. I wasn't really that involved. I helped the instructors set up any props or aids they would use. I played the crazy rapist or gang member who would sneak up on women and children and grab them, and getting my ass kicked for my efforts. I was able to land well without getting too far down the road of actually being violent. I should have been the most unsuccessful rapist in the history of mankind. I never progressed beyond grabbing my victim by the hand or wrist before being sent flying. I learned a few good moves myself just by watching, listening, and being a clumsy sex devil. For the first few months, it felt like I was running a marathon every day. I was tired to the point of broken bones, sore muscles, and a few bruises. Toward the end of the second month, I realized that the pain and fatigue were quite tolerable. I was even looking forward to going to class. What was even more amazing was how well the ballroom dancing was going. In each of the 3 dance classes, I had several ladies insisting on being my partner. I actually had to share my time and attention to keep the peace. I wish I could say they were all hot single women wanting me to take them to bed and use them ruthlessly. That would be an exaggeration. Many of the ladies were older. Most of them were married. Some were overweight. Some were ugly as hell. But they all got my full attention when I danced with them, and they loved it. Eric, you have a whole harem of dance partners, Becky remarked when we got together after dance class one night. You're more graceful than Frank, and you treat women in such a way that they practically fight over the chance to be your partner. I was careful not to mislead any of my dance partners into thinking I would be available off the dance floor. It actually made things much more comfortable for these women. They knew there would be no rumors or questions about their virtue, at least when it came to me. So here I am, at my best friend's house enjoying an outdoor party the evening before his daughter's wedding. Becky helped me pick out a new suit. I had to admit it looked pretty good on me, a slightly Western style that seemed to increase the width of my shoulders and helped to minimize my waist. I told Becky about it. You're such a nerd sometimes, Eric, Becky muttered, shaking her head. It's not the damn suit that makes your shoulders and chest broad and your waist thin. It's all the hours on the machines and with free weights. It's the 100 miles you've logged on the dance floor. You're not as bulky as Frank, but you're in as good shape as he is. Haven't you noticed how heads turn and people stare when you lift weights or show someone how to use the exercise machines? Ava gets her panties in a bunch when she sees you. Becky even helped pick out a couple of nice short-sleeved shirts for casual wear at the festivities. They seemed a little tight, so I asked her about it. Eric, listen to me. With your new body, a little tight is the norm. You're not the kind of guy who has to buy shirts 2 sizes bigger to cover his belly. Trust me, I want you to be wearing this blue one when you first come to the party. You're like a work of art that I created. I want to show you in your best light. You'll wear the suit to the wedding and this shirt the next day. You won't regret it, I promise. I had been at the party for about an hour when Eva and the asshole showed up. My daughter Julie was with them. She had just finished her senior year at a good college in California. I hadn't seen much of her since she went there, and even less since I dumped my ass on the curb. Dad! Wow! Where's my dad, and what did you do with him? Joked a smiling Julie, hugging me tightly. Looks like Aunt Becky has had her influence on you. Look at your arms and chest, Dad. Your belly's gone, you've cut your hair and gotten in shape. I bet the ladies love my daddy's new body. Before I could respond to her teasing, Eve stopped in front of me with Gerald DeWitt Jr., a.k.a. Asshole. I had to smile slightly as I watched Eve appreciate my new and improved look. Hey, Eric, you're looking good. We're glad you were able to come to terms with the situation and finally agree to the terms of the divorce. Gerald and I are very fair, and I'm sure you've finally realized that. If you had been more cooperative, we could have ended all of this as early as last year. I don't care at all what that asshole thinks or wants. It took a while, but in the end we were able to come to an agreement that I can live with. Don't try to pretend this asshole was being generous or considerate. He has no say in my divorce. I absolutely don't remember seeing him at our wedding and making vows to him, so his thoughts on whatever it was mean nothing to me. Julia was still hugging me as I said hello to Eva and her lover. I felt her body tense and her arm tense. She had never heard me speak like that in her life. To be honest, I'd never talked to anyone like that. I'd always been the type to avoid confrontation. Those days were gone, and it felt good to let some of my anger out. Gerald was a big guy. He was probably 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than me. Whether it was because I didn't look bothered or he didn't care, he blushed profusely at my words, but didn't make the slightest move to slap me. I just stared at him and smirked. About that time, Steve came over and turned me around. He made it clear that he wanted me to go with him. Let's get a beer, Eric, he insisted. Damn, man. I don't blame you for wanting to mix that asshole with shit, but it's Anne's wedding, for Christ's sake, Steve reminded me as we walked to the fridge with the beer. Grace will kick your ass if you mess this up. You're right, Steve, I agreed. I feel a lot better now, and I'll behave myself if only that asshole would leave me alone. There's no way I'm ruining this weekend. Tell Anne and Grace that I apologize and will behave myself. You tell her yourself, Eric. Looks like she's headed this way. Someone must have told her something. I'm really glad I'm not in your shoes. I've got to smooth things over with Eve and the bastard. Good luck with Grace. Steve tossed over his shoulder, walking away quickly. Grace looked grim as she approached. She took my hand and led me away from any possible listeners. She looked back and seemed satisfied that no one would be able to hear what she was about to say. Eric, I can see why you were rude to the point of indecency with Eva and Gerald Jr. Are you feeling better after that inappropriate behavior? Grace asked. Well, now that you ask, Grace, I feel much better. I realize this was not the time or place, and I apologize to you and Anne. I'll keep my emotions under control for the rest of the weekend, I promised. That's good to hear, Eric, Grace replied. However, if that asshole gives you any trouble at all, do what you have to do and don't worry about anyone else. Anne can't stand that asshole, and it will probably be the apotheosis of her wedding to see him get what he deserves from you. There are also rumors that Gerald Jr. isn't too keen on testing your sincerity, Eric. You've changed. You've gone from a very nice meat guy to a very nice tough guy. I love it. For the rest of the party, I tried to avoid Eve and Gerald. Anne introduced me to her sailor boy. His name was Jim, and he had the look of a man experienced beyond his years. Uncle Eric, I heard what you said to Aunt Eva and her jerk friend, or whatever he is. I just want you to know that I was never prouder of you than when I heard what you said. You've always been too nice. Always taking too much shit from people, no offense, Uncle Eric. If that pompous jackass starts any trouble, a certain Marine will be there to help quell the riot. My future husband won't take crap from anyone either, Anne proudly proclaimed. Soon my daughter Julie took my hand and walked with me. It had been too long since I had spent time with my daughter, and we spent those few minutes catching up. "Julie, has your mother gained weight?" I asked quietly. "She looks pretty wide in the ass, and her breasts look like they're sagging." "Honestly?" Julie grinned. "Yesterday she was telling me how she's lost 10 pounds since you guys broke up. She tried to make it sound like Gerald was so good for her that it made her lose weight. Here being around you was ruining her health." I just ignore her stupid comments. I don't see her that often, and I don't want to push her away, although I've been mad at the way she treated you for as long as I can remember. You look much happier, healthier, and more confident than I ever remember, Dad. I have to say, I was really surprised at the way you jumped on Mom and Dumbass when you said hello to them. You have confidence now. Do you really think you'll be able to cash the checks your mouth is writing if Gerald comes after you, Dad?" Julie asked. "You look very chipper, but he's a pretty big guy." "I honestly have no idea, Julie. I just know I had to put it out of my mind after that bastard ruined my marriage," I admitted. "If he'd decided to go further, I was willing to give it a try. I've learned that there are a lot of things worse than getting your ass kicked for protecting yourself or your loved ones. I just wish I'd said more back then when we broke up." "Well, Dad, it's probably best you didn't try. You were stunned back then, and it took some time to regain your self-respect, but you did a damn good job. I have to call Aunt Becky and thank her for everything she did for you. I will be so proud when I tell my friends that the hottest hottie at tomorrow's wedding is my dad." Shortly after my conversation with Julia, a slender, attractive woman came up to me and introduced herself. I estimated that she was in her early 40s, maybe a little less. She struck up a conversation on her own, and we spent the next hour chatting like old friends. Turns out her name is Marcy. She was Grace's cousin, divorced 5 years ago, and had always wanted to ride a Harley. I got the distinct impression that she wanted to ride something else when we were done with the Harley. The party was coming to an end, and we said goodbye to Anne, Jim, Steve, and Grace. "I see you've met my cousin Marcy. Take good care of her and try to be at the wedding tomorrow morning on time, Eric. Save some energy for the reception, too. I expect you to dance with the mother of the bride more than once," Grace teased. I saddled the bike and helped Marcy onto the back of it. I gave her a spare helmet from my saddlebag and was just starting to pull mine on when I saw Eve staring at me with her mouth open. Whether it was the Harley or the woman sitting behind me, or a combination of the two, Eva seemed completely shocked. Julia was standing next to her, grinning ear to ear. For some reason, that made me smile as I squeezed between two parked cars and drove up the driveway with Marcy snuggled up against me. I made it to the wedding with a few minutes to spare. Marcy spent the night with me, but in the morning I had to take her to the hotel so she could change and get cleaned up. I was sitting alone on the bike when I felt her slip into the seat behind me. She had really prepared well for the festivities. The wedding went smoothly. Marcy refused to ride the bike with me to the reception, but assured me that she would find me when I got to the reception. By the time I got there and found my seat, Marcy was already sitting next to me. I chuckled to myself at how women always seem to know how to work these things. It was hardly a coincidence. Aunt Grace, Marcy's mother, was a dance instructor. Consequently, all the women and most of the men in her family were very good dancers. When it became clear that I knew how to behave on the dance floor, the demand for me became constant. Grace and I played one hell of a wicked foxtrot, and Anne insisted I dance with her. Marcy even had the DJ find a tango and pulled me to the middle of the dance floor. We made quite a few mistakes since we had never practiced together, but everyone loved it, and they clapped wildly. Then Grace and Steve were the only couple on the dance floor, and it was obvious they had spent some time practicing their moves. They were flawless. The best part was that the more I danced and chatted with the ladies, the darker Eva's face became. She looked like a cat had shit in her oatmeal. She and Shithead danced a few times, but they looked unnatural and moved like robots. Near the end of the evening, I felt the call of nature and excused myself to use the restroom. When I got there, the maintenance guy was trying to dredge up the aftermath of the disaster of an overflowing toilet. He suggested I use the restroom near the locker room. As is always the case when you really have to pee, you have a hard time even finding the damn locker room. I found the women's locker room and saw the door across the hall. Where a sign had obviously once hung before, there were some stains visible. It seemed reasonable to me that this could very well be the men's locker room. I opened the door and looked inside. It was just a large closet with various equipment stored along the far wall. What really caught my eye was my devoted, soon-to-be ex-wife, encased in a loving embrace with some guy probably about 10 years younger than her. He was wearing a golf shirt with a country club emblem on it, so I thought he might be from the maintenance staff at the golf club. It also occurred to me that I didn't really care. I pulled my phone out of my breast pocket and pointed it at the happy couple. "Say cheese!" I grinned as Ava desperately tried to pull her dress back up over her exposed body parts. By the time Ava had covered her body, I was on my way back to the banquet hall. I was on my way back when it occurred to me that I still hadn't peed, but somehow that need was no longer so acute. I found Gerald Jr. drinking alone, and I rushed over to him. "Junior," I called out to him, "look at this." That's how Eva found us when she entered the room. I quickly left Junior and walked over to Marcy and hugged her. "Let's say goodbye to everyone and go for a ride," I suggested. I still laugh when I think of Marcy with her dress pulled up, shoved between our bodies, and her long legs completely exposed. I know that those who watched us pull out of the parking lot must have seen her thong, or at least part of her ass as we rushed back to the hotel to change. "Wow," Becky exhaled when I finished my story about the wedding weekend. "You've hit all the bases, Eric. Let's see." "You looked great," told Junior off, danced like Fred Astaire, slept with Marcy a few times, made Ava regret losing such a desirable hottie, won the respect of your friends and daughter, saw how fat and unattractive Eva really was, and showed the asshole who stole your wife a picture of his bride-to-be in the arms of another man. Did I miss anything, vindictive boyfriend? Becky, how can you say that? You're hurting me. Look at my phone. Where do you see a camera? My brother Frank reached out, took the outstretched phone, and laughed. "It's a fucking $5 track phone. He can't take pictures with that thing. I'm not even sure he can make a phone call with it," Frank roared with tears in his eyes. "Then how did you get back at Ava?" Becky asked. "Did you tell the asshole what you saw and expect him to believe you?" Let me ask Frank a couple questions. Frank, you'd like to know if the woman you're marrying cheated on you once her divorce is final? Would you hate the guy who told you about it? Heck, I'd want to know, and I'd be grateful to the guy for telling me. I'd consider him a true friend and thank him for keeping me from making a huge mistake and possibly wasting years of my life on some cheating fool. Frank replied with surprising excitement. I would have felt the same way, so I just showed the dumb asshole my cool track phone and left before Ava could approach. She looked like she was having a heart attack, but it was that fucking asshole who gave me the horns that I really wanted revenge on, I admitted, smirking at that memory. You vile, vindictive man, Becky laughed. You didn't say anything to him? You almost gave Eve a heart attack, but the jerk still marries her because he doesn't know she cheated on him as well as him? How screwed up is he? The end.